Hi class, I will be conducting a presentation on Carnival and its progression and how it obtained a lot of Afro-Brazilian influence throughout the years. I'm going to start off by speaking about the early years of Carnival. Around the 1840s, it was celebrated predominantly by white upperclassmen in aristocratic balls, but there was also another way that it was celebrated, and it was celebrated also through the lower class, known as intrudos, and this was known as the rough and dirty celebration of the common folk at the time. And they extinct, and authorities extinguished it, and they created another celebration known as the Carnival Parade, and it made its debut in 1884 in the city of Salvador, where it first took place, and it emulated pre-Lent celebrations of Venice and Nice. In these parades, upper-class people dressed in luxurious European costumes, and for about 10 or more years, Carnival was specifically for white people, specifically a white festival, until the arrival of the Foxy. The Foxy is a procession that brings the ceremonial music of Candomblé with its songs, music, rhythms, dance, and percussion instruments. And the Foxy began in Salvador, and since then they have grown massively in the streets of Carnival. And also the sound of the Foxys were tranquil and serene. The first Foxy to parade on the streets of Carnival was the group Embaixada Africana, also known as the African Embassy, and it made its debut in 1895. And many more have preceded ever since. And the first group was a great influence on other Foxy groups. 3 years later, the upper class became offended by the African influence in parades, and thus they forbidded the Foxy's groups and said that they were quote unquote ethnic and social reasons behind it, that for the sake of morality, public welfare, crime, and disorder. They said that these were one of the main reasons why they stopped the Foxy groups. And for the next 3 decades, Carnival in Bahia was celebrated in private clubs by the rich, and in the streets known as bloques, which were seen as modern-day block parties. These were just for the upper white people. And there was an obvious, persistent repression of Afro-Brazilian culture, as we can see throughout these decades. The situation would begin to change in 1848 with the founding of the Hijos de Gandhi, also known as the Sons of Gandhi. And the founder was Antonio Kurosi. And these were one of the most famous Foxy groups. They decided to name it after Gandhi because it was a symbol of peace and a nonviolent approach. It was a nonviolent approach. Their nonviolent approach and the use of the name Gandhi gained them widespread respectability, and thus they were granted permission to parade on the streets of Carnival, and they made their debut in 1949. In 1950, 2 musicians that went by the name of Dodo and Osmad appeared on the streets on a pickup truck. They used electric guitars and portable amps to play their music. Their primary music was frevo. It was a highly syncopated, fast tempo marcha, and they added a 3rd member along the way, and it was known as Trio Electrico. Trio Electrico soon became a common sight in Salvador, during Carnival, leading crowds of people behind them dancing and singing. And Bloque's Afro was linked to a renewal of black consciousness that took place in Salvador and the rest of Brazil. Between 1960 and 1970, many young black Brazilians received influence from North American black people, specifically artists such as James Brown and the Jackson 5, and their Black Power movement, Black is Beautiful, and it found its way and trickled down into Brazil, the whole country of Brazil. The Brazilian movement renewed a pride and a sense of pride in African roots. And the surge in black culture led to two men to create a group called Ila Aye, which is also known as the House of Life, which was a Yoruba phrase. Only very dark-skinned blacks could become members of this group, and at the time, the way that they brought themselves out was through they gathered a group of people, and they didn't have any political support, and they took it to the streets, parading and pounding African Brazilian rhythms. And by the early 1990s, they gained widespread popularity and gained up to more than 2,000 members by the 1990s. And each year they performed a different aspect of their African heritage. They celebrated negritude, which was blackness, and they celebrated it through urging resistance against dominant light-skinned Brazilians, and also by advocating against the condescending words that they would use against the black Brazilians. Bloque's Afro allowed young black population of Salvador to identify themselves through dance and songs, and tell outsiders about their culture and who they were as Afro-Brazilians. These Afro-Brazilian organization groups began to steadily decline in the 1960s and 70s until the state tourism arm realized their importance in the value of tourism, and they wanted to bring them back and start a re-Africanization of Carnival. And one of the ways, and one prime reason how many of these groups, how they began to regain popularity and was through Gilberto Gil, who picked up 20 of the Filhos de Gandhi, sons of Gandhi, and he revitalized them, and he brought them back to this carnival scene. Lastly, I just wanted to put everything together and state how, Carnival progressed throughout the years from being a predominantly white upper class celebrated festival to being very African based and a lot of African influence throughout the years because of these African groups such as the Foxys, the Filhos de Gandhi, Bloque Afros, and other groups that influence many young African Brazilians to participate in Carnival. Okay, thank you guys for listening to my participation, to my presentation. Thank you.